This is the story of Louis Hector Berlioz, who was supposed to be a doctor, but so loved music that he overcame all the difficulties put in his way and grew up to be one of the most famous composers of the past century. It was a happy childhood for the girls and boys in the home of Louis Berlioz, a well-known country doctor at Côte Saint-André. Their big house on the hill overlooking the beautiful French countryside was filled with laughter and with the sound of music. All the Berlioz children were taught to play different instruments, but only the oldest son, Hector, was outstanding right from the start. As a little boy, he had already begged and begged for music lessons from his father, who was quite a good amateur himself. And at the age of 10, Hector mastered the flute as well as the guitar so perfectly that his teachers no longer could show him a thing. But that was not all. Hector could also sing almost every melody at sight. His pretty soprano voice was often heard at church services. How he adored the sound of these ancient hymns. This, he thought, must be how the angels sing in heaven. Would it not be wonderful if one could compose such divine music instead of just performing it? A melody like this. Hector ran upstairs into the doctor's room. "Father," he shouted excitedly, "if I get very good marks at school, may I study music also, but really well? I want to know all about writing tunes because, look, I made up a few. Are they any good?" "Well, my boy," said the doctor, "what you have written here seems good enough to me. Surely you shall have harmony lessons, and later, when you will be studying medicine in Paris, you may even enter the conservatory and take a few courses in composition. But remember, just for a hobby, I want you to become a good doctor, as I am. This is the finest profession in the world. You can always enjoy music in your spare time. Surely, Father, anything you say. Oh, I shall study hard, I promise." And so it came that a few years later, young Hector set out for the big city of Paris, which was famous for its fine medical school, and also happened to be the center of musical life in Europe. Paris in the 1820s was a wonderful place to live. There were elegant people, brilliant artists, and also young bohemians, gay as larks, even in their unheated garrets. Big parties, glittering balls, picnics in the Bois de Boulogne, boat rides on the Seine, great concerts and performances at the Opera Comique. Hector drank it all in. How often did he wish that the day had more hours? There was so much to do. Most of his time he spent at the conservatory in the composition class of Professor Lesueur, studying scores of Bach, Gluck, Haydn, and other great masters. Evening would find him at the opera, way up in the gallery with his student friends. Young Berlioz got so excited listening to music that he often forgot to eat or even to sleep. This is what he wanted to write: great symphonies, great choral works, great operas. He would be a composer and nothing else. His medical books remained unopened. He did not attend the lectures anymore. It was impossible for him to become a doctor and see sick, helpless people. But how would he ever tell his father? Sometime later, Berlioz and his cousin Robert sat together in their modest room. This then, said Hector sadly, is father's reply to my letter. How I pleaded with him for permission to leave medical school, but no and no again. To him, I am an ungrateful son who has broken his promise. If I insist on studying music only, he will no longer send me any money, and I shall have to support myself. But what are you going to do? Oh, I shall manage. I can live on bread and fruit, at least during the summer, and I'll take on a few pupils. Perhaps there are some odd jobs at the theater to keep me going. You just wait. I'll show the world. Yes, Berlioz did show the world, but only after a long, hard struggle. The young composer was bursting with new, bold ideas. He created sound effects nobody had ever dreamt of. But his teachers believed in the old, traditional rules of harmony and form. Signor Cherubini, director of the conservatory and a famous composer himself, spoke angrily to Berlioz. "You think you know better than the great classics. This music is horrible and unplayable." But listen, sir, please listen. The students are just rehearsing my new overture. Doesn't it sound exciting? My dear boy, for these compositions you will never get the Rome Prize at the final competition. I know you are trying hard for it, and who wouldn't? A 5-year scholarship for a stay in Rome and other centers of music. See to it that we can select you. Berlioz worked feverishly now, composing, teaching, and singing in the chorus of a shabby little theater just to make a few extra francs. There was no relaxation or pleasure, only occasionally an hour to read. He loved the works of the great poets, Shakespeare, Lord Byron, and Goethe. When an English company played Romeo and Juliet in Paris, Berlioz felt he had never seen anything more beautiful. He immediately fell in love with pretty young Henrietta Smithson, who played Juliet. I am going to marry her, he said to himself, and I will write my greatest symphony on that play. And he actually did both a few years later.